Voting Keir Starmer, the UK Premier.
Yes, he's coming tonight.
What do you think of him? Some of his colleagues in government are quite critical of you.
Well, I'm going to see him in about an hour, so I have to be nice, right? But I actually think he's very nice. I think he ran a great race. He did very well. It's very early, but he's popular, and I'll be seeing him, and I'll send you regards. Who are you with?
GB News in the UK.
Okay, good.
But would you rather Nigel Farage would have had a bigger role?
Well, I think Nigel is great. I mean, I've known him for a long time. He had a great election, too. He picked up a lot of seats, more seats than he was allowed to have, actually. They acknowledge that he won, but for some reason you have a very strange system over there. You might win them, but you don't get them.
Pay forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first.
Keir Starmer is in full damage control mode after Donald Trump dropped a bombshell live on TV, exposing a shocking secret that's sending shockwaves through the political world. This explosive revelation has left Starmer scrambling and the public demanding answers. What exactly did Trump reveal, and how will Starmer handle the fallout? Let's break it all down.
Don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
As the USA and the world celebrated Donald Trump's inauguration, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer was busy returning from yet another trip, where he pledged hundreds of billions of British taxpayers' money to Ukraine, stretching commitments for the next 100 years. Hey, quick favour before we move on. If you find this content interesting, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel. Most of you watch without subscribing, and it's free, but it helps us out so much. Have you done it yet? Thanks a ton for the support. Now, let's get back to the video.
Support for one another in times of war and in times of peace, and we don't have a seat at the table.
Yes, I don't understand the details of this, so we'll wait for government perhaps to clarify. But you're absolutely right that the United States is our closest security ally. And as we've discussed on your program many times, the world is getting far more dangerous, far more unstable, and we need to be close with America to deal with the challenges that are coming over the hill. I've just been commenting this week that 2025 will be the year of grey zone warfare. We're going to be attacked left, right and centre, and Western nations, particularly Britain and America, need to work together to unify and stand up to that threat. And what we're seeing in Ukraine, for example, is where Putin is surviving. He will continue to place a threat on the UK, the West, Europe, and indeed America as well. So it does seem a little bit confusing, puzzling as to why the Prime Minister, whatever you think of the Prime Minister, is not invited to be part of the inauguration process.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, but I mean, does it not also suggest that there's something that the Prime Minister might have done to mean that he would be excluded from it?
If there is anything that they've done, then that should be overlooked in some respect, because as I say, to invite the leader, the closest security ally of America, which is the United Kingdom, they very much see us in that way. We offer.
To make matters worse, Keir Starmer reportedly worked against Donald Trump during the American elections. But before you think two-tier Keir might redeem himself with the Trump administration, that possibility seems far-fetched. Starmer's exclusion from Trump's inauguration has become a heated topic in British politics, sparking outrage over his absence.
Global security. We help craft the international rules-based order as it sits today. So it would almost seem churlish if that's the case. There may be some detail that we're missing here, so I'm not sure we should jump to conclusions yet. It could be that a member of the royal family will be attending instead, which is actually the head of state, if you think about it. But it does seem odd. Certainly, I mean, I myself will be going to America for the inauguration period. not just to be witness the celebrations and the changeover, which will certainly be interesting, but also develop those strengths, to create those back channels, to have an understanding of where this Republican Party under Donald Trump, who, let's be honest, is far more controversial, will take America in a very, very different direction. But America has spoken. Donald Trump has been elected, and it's important that we work, as I stressed, with our closest security ally.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, it looks as though already
Critics argue that his actions and comments from other Labour figures likely contributed to the snub, which many see as a damning reflection of his leadership. As the leader of the UK, America's closest ally, Starmer's absence is viewed by many as a failure to uphold the special relationship between the two nations, overshadowed by his strained ties with Trump.
And it is pretty embarrassing for Britain to have the special relationship that we have, and everybody knows we have it with the United States of America, but Donald Trump has seen fit not to invite Sir Keir Starmer, no doubt because of his views on Donald Trump, no doubt because of David Lammy's sayings on Donald Trump, maybe indeed because of Sadiq Khan's protestations about what a horrible man Donald Trump is. You know, you can't mess around in politics and pretend that you're in a student union, because otherwise you end up being left on the outside of all of the good stuff that's going on. And next Monday, when Donald Trump is inaugurated as the 47th President of the United States of America, I consider it to be a massive stain on British history that our Prime Minister will not be there.
The situation underscores the growing divide between the UK and the US, with many viewing Keir Starmer's exclusion from Trump's inauguration as a national embarrassment. Critics argue that his outspoken opposition to Trump's policies and refusal to align with the US leadership have alienated Britain from its closest ally.
And it is pretty embarrassing for Britain to have the special relationship that we have, and everybody knows we have it with the United States of America, but Donald Trump has seen fit not to invite Sir Keir Starmer, no doubt because of his views on Donald Trump, no doubt because of David Lammy's sayings on Donald Trump, maybe indeed because of Sadiq Khan's protestations about what a horrible man Donald Trump is. You know, you can't mess around in politics and pretend that you're in a student union, because otherwise you end up being left on the outside of all of the good stuff that's going on. And next Monday, when Donald Trump is inaugurated as the 47th President of the United States of America, I consider it to be a massive stain on British history that our Prime Minister will not be there. Let's ask Tobias Elwood what he makes of it. Tobias, very good morning to you.
Public frustration is mounting, as many see Starmer's actions as weakening the UK's global standing at a time when strong ties with the US are more critical than ever. Amid rising global instability and threats from adversarial nations, Britain's handling of foreign relations, particularly with China, is seen as inadequate. Starmer's exclusion serves as a stark reminder of Britain's diminishing influence on the world stage under his leadership.
A little note on Trump, I suppose, before we start on what's going on here in Downing Street. We have yet to see or hear the Trump-Starmer conversation. Many people saying to me that, everything's fine, the relationship's absolutely no problem at all. The fact that, Starmer wasn't invited to the inauguration doesn't matter. But it kind of does, because he's already behind several world leaders who will have had conversations with Trump. There used to be the race to be the first person to talk to the new president. He's already lost that, and who knows how long it's going to be before Trump deigns to have a conversation with him.
Yeah, I mean, the really interesting thing is that most White House, there's not a lot of access, but a lot of influence, i.e. that, you can't really get to them. Once you can get to them, you can influence them. The reverse is true with Trump, which is that there's lots of access, not much influence, in that he tends to reflect the opinion of the last person who spoke to him. So having that regular having that regular communication is really important, which is why obviously people like Nigel Farage were very keen to go over there and talk to him. And so I do think that while we've got important strategic interests, it's clear that already I don't think Donald Trump and Keir Starmer are going to be particularly getting on very personally.
No, exactly right. And we see from the Times this morning that, Trump's focus is very much not on the UK necessarily, specifically, but it's very much on foreign companies and foreign countries coming to America and trying to do business there, because it looks as though he's going to bring in all sorts of steep tax rises on foreign nationals working in the US, as well as also companies wishing to...
The strained relationship between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump is becoming more evident, with the lack of communication between the two leaders drawing attention. Starmer's absence from Trump's inauguration is viewed as a major diplomatic snub, especially as other world leaders have already secured meetings with the new president. This exclusion underscores how Starmer's policies and stance have distanced the UK from one of its closest allies. While Trump prioritizes business interests, tariffs, and national security, Starmer's approach is seen by many as ineffective and misaligned with the priorities of the US under Trump's leadership.
Mandelson's name keeps coming up in the frame. Not very sure whether he's going to be welcomed with open arms by the White House and the new teams in there. And now suddenly Ed Miliband's brother, David Miliband, is offering very generously to solve the problem by stepping into the ambassador's shoes himself.
Well, there's that tact and charm which almost won in the Labour leadership. Look, I think that, David Miliband has been spotted a lot around Westminster in recent months. I bumped into him myself, actually. Walking around. So he's been having lots of meetings. Now, of course, he's the head of International Rescue, not the Thunderbirds theme, but the international aid charity in Washington, which earns a fortune. So I think that he's clearly someone who wants to get more back involved in the kind of US-UK relationship. But I think that it's more likely that Mandelson will get appointed at some point, and that it's certain members, as I say, going back to that first point I made about lots of Trump people say they speak for him, say they'll do this and that. I think it's more likely than not that Mandelson will be appointed as ambassador.
Yeah, well, let's wait.
Public frustration is mounting over the government's inability to tackle critical issues like the economy and immigration, which many see as mishandled under Starmer's leadership. As Britain edges toward a potential economic downturn, Starmer is increasingly viewed as out of touch with the nation's needs. With growing discontent over what is perceived as disconnected and ineffective governance, many feel the country is heading in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, as Trump strengthens alliances with trusted figures like Nigel Farage, Starmer's leadership is seen as further isolating Britain and diminishing its global influence.
Unusual. It would be highly embarrassing.
Yeah.
And any talk, there was talk at the beginning of the week that, Keir Starmer and Donald Trump, that special relationship endures. And
the strained relationship between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump is becoming increasingly obvious. Starmer's leadership style, which contrasts sharply with Trump's bold and direct approach, is seen as a key reason for his exclusion from Trump's inauguration. Despite the critical importance of the US-UK alliance, Starmer's past statements and those of his allies against Trump have sidelined him diplomatically. Critics argue that Starmer's inability to manage crises or lead decisively has left him out of touch and with dwindling influence on the global stage.
in this country, I think we all should be worried about this. This is not a good thing. Nobody celebrates there not being a good relationship between the UK and the US. It doesn't do us any favours.
But he has, on the face of it, he's moved the Churchill a statue back into the bust, back into the White House.
It should be a good relationship.
It should be, but also Donald Trump is a clever guy, and he will make Starmer work for it, is my suggestion. And it may well be that Mandelson ends up getting the job, but Trump wants to put him through the ringer first, and he wants to make him wait, and he'll probably wait for him to beg him to call him. He'll make him wait for that, because he plays the game, doesn't he?
And he's
the art of the deal.
He's very astute like this, and obviously comparisons have been made previously to some sort of like mobster boss, but there is something true to it that if you and he forgave J.D. Vance was scathing about Trump previously, but he's his vice president. But if you kiss the ring, if you go up and you say, "I'm sorry,
I made a mistake.
I made a mistake," then he's willing to accommodate you. What he doesn't like, and I think this was where it was heading, particularly with, like at the beginning of last week with the Chagos Islands deal, was people thinking that they can pull the wool over his eyes, or that he's a bit, he's stupid, and that they can somehow just get round him.
Which, of course, he's very much not.
The public is outraged as Starmer continues to miss critical opportunities to mend strained relations, while figures like Nigel Farage secure stronger ties with Trump. This isn't just a political misstep, it has serious implications for Britain's future economic and diplomatic interests. With Starmer's government struggling to provide bold leadership or forge key partnerships, many fear Britain's role on the world stage is at risk. Critics question whether his lack of rapport with global leaders will hinder the UK's ability to tackle crucial issues such as trade, security and climate challenges in an increasingly uncertain world.
Starmer held a press conference about the Southport atrocity, and personally, I think it was appalling. He 100% confirmed that, whilst he was saying stuff like this,
the disorder is intolerable, it is incapable of justification. It's clearly racist. I won't shy away from calling it what it is. Far-right thuggery. To those who feel targeted because of the colour of your skin, I want you to know that this violent mob do not represent our country.
He knew that Axel Rudikabana was in possession of a jihadi terror training manual and that he had a biological weapon in his bedroom and that he had a history of extreme violence.
Yes, I knew the details as they were emerging. That is the usual practice in a case such as this. But you know, and I...
Keir Starmer's press conference on the Southport tragedy has sparked public outrage, with many questioning his credibility and integrity. Starmer attempted to justify his decision to withhold key details about the perpetrator, Axel Rudikabana, including possession of a jihadi terror manual and a biological weapon. He claimed the disclosure could have jeopardised the trial, but the public sees this as a hollow excuse.
That it would not have been right to disclose those details.
So when he was, in my view, encouraging people to be locked up for indicating that there may have been an Islamist link, he did know that the perpetrator was in possession of an Islamist manual. So his reason is that he didn't want to prejudice the trial.
Importance of the rule about not disclosing this information is to ensure that the trial can take place and that where an individual is guilty, they're held to account, as has now happened in this case. And that is why the law carefully restricts what can be said by anyone, not just me as Prime Minister, but anybody in these circumstances. And it is done to protect the family and their victims. That is the right thing. And that is what the law requires. It's also the choice I would make to ensure that my first thoughts are about justice for the victims and their families.
Well, I'm sorry, but I think that's rubbish. Because if it would have prejudiced the case to tell us this stuff in July, why was it okay for the police to tell us it in October?
All summer we were repeatedly told that the Stockport attack was not terror-related, wasn't being treated as terror-related. That wasn't true. Because in October, the monster was charged with a terror offence. Now, information was put into the public domain then that didn't collapse the trial. It didn't jeopardise justice. It was just months later.
The first is on the question of terrorism and what constitutes terrorism.
Critics are asking why it was deemed too risky to reveal this information in July, but acceptable months later once Abana was charged with terrorism. The inconsistency in Starmer's explanations has only deepened public distrust, with many accusing him of gaslighting the nation under the guise of protecting justice while concealing the truth.
I regret blaming the far right for all those protests last summer. Was it a far right issue, or were some people entitled to be concerned and upset, not the rioters?
Responsibility for the violence lies with them that perpetrated it. I was in Southport the day after these terrible murders. I was acknowledging and thanking the frontline police officers and
Public anger has intensified over Keir Starmer's rhetoric, particularly his labelling of the Southport rioters as far-right thugs, which many believe unfairly prejudiced their cases before trial. His contradictory stance on justice has fueled doubts about his commitment to fairness and transparency.
Being at the scene.
Right, so that's a no then, isn't it? So knowing everything we know now, he'd do nothing differently. I think that's a concern, isn't it? We're going to have an inquiry into this now. He's called for an inquiry into this now. We'll see how long that takes. But the fact is this, isn't it? I think that public trust in Starmer has gone. How can we ever trust that when confronted with the choice between telling us the truth or trying to hide things to not inflame racial tensions?
Starmer's selective release of information, seemingly based on political convenience, has further eroded public trust. Calls for accountability are growing louder, with demands for the release and compensation of individuals allegedly jailed for simply protesting and speaking out. Starmer's mishandling of the crisis has left many questioning his leadership and wondering how much longer he can remain in power.
By gas that we were burning. So if we're going to be using this stuff, and yeah, we'll keep trying to find, new technologies and all the rest, but why not produce it yourself? And that's really what Trump's saying, and we're saying pretty much the same thing.
I've never understood, and listen, you lead a political party. I'm nobody, but this is what I don't get. You've got patently a government that are trying to screw the farming community to go bankrupt, to nick their land, to build wind farms when we know there's not enough wind in the United Kingdom, whereupon, you idiot Starmer, you're going to have to import oil and gas, liquid gold that we've got under the ground at a cost that's 3 times more than you could do it yourself, and that'll screw the British people even more. How does any of that make sense, Nigel?
You know, last week I had coffee with a bloke who's got 30,000 UK employees, right?
Yeah.
So serious businessman, somebody that really matters in this country. He said in 1990...
Nigel Farage appeared on Talk TV to condemn Keir Starmer's handling of the Southport attack, calling it one of the biggest cover-ups he'd ever witnessed. Farage criticised Starmer for refusing to acknowledge the terrorist nature of the attack, despite undeniable evidence, including the perpetrator's possession of an Al-Qaeda training manual and chemical weapons.
His electricity costs were exactly the same as America's for running the business, right? Mm-hmm. Today, they're six times America's. Think about that. 6 times America's. And ask yourself why the biggest refinery in the UK is about to close. Ask yourself why Port Talbot, the steelworks, closed a few months ago. Ask yourself why most of our chemicals industry has gone, why both of our aluminium smelters have gone. We are literally deindustrializing, forcing up prices, importing more goods that we could make and produce ourselves. It is literally lunacy. And I think in America, with Trump, it's all over.
By withholding critical information, Farage argued, Starmer allowed misinformation to spread, fueling unrest and public frustration. Even after the attack was confirmed as a terror incident, Starmer's reluctance to label it as such drew sharp criticism. Adding to the outrage, many believe Starmer's decision to preemptively brand the rioters as far-right thugs undermined their right to a fair trial, further eroding public trust in his leadership.
When we watched that yesterday, I'm going to bring you on to today, and I watched it with goosebumps. I did the show. I was on the school run this morning, listened to Mike, and the difference between a man who, yes, has had his issues, Donald Trump. There are certain things that none of us would agree with, but what that man did was he grabbed the pulse of the British public, which is what I believe Reform is doing brilliantly. And then this morning I listened to that dreary, reactive, not proactive lawyer, and was thoroughly and utterly uninspired. I want to talk, if I can, about these dreadful, dreadful stabbings in Southport. I'll take you back to July. You were accused of stirring up online conspiracy theories. You were called Tommy Robinson in a suit over the comments that you made. You posted a video on X before the riots broke out, questioning the accuracy of the police's assessment that that knife attack was not terror-related. Now,
calls for accountability have grown louder, with demands for an inquiry into Keir Starmer's role in pushing arrests based on misinformation during the Southport incident. The frustration extends beyond this case, as anger mounts over the government's failure to tackle grooming gangs and address issues impacting the working class.
Absolutely right. I've got a theory which you might laugh out of town. If our Prime Minister at that moment stood up, and we understand that there's certain stuff legally that he couldn't have said, but had been a little bit more forthcoming, that it was a terrorist attack, it was under control, all the things that have been said in other situations before, presumably the vacuum of discontent that started online wouldn't have spread onto the streets, whereupon he could arrest and jail everybody within 24 hours and look strong. Do we not believe that his dishonesty at that moment was actually part of the reason there were the very problems which he then put down to the far right? Or have I missed the point?
Yes, I get it completely.
Reform UK supporters, led by Nigel Farage, argue that the political system is broken, positioning him as the leader capable of delivering the change the country needs. Many are rallying around Reform UK, calling for a new direction and urging voters to abandon mainstream parties which they feel have consistently failed them. The message is clear. The public is ready for radical change, and Farage is emerging as a key figure in this movement. As the public demands answers, the fallout from this explosive moment is only just beginning. Will Starmer be able to weather the storm, or has this exposed a crack too big to repair? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more updates on this unfolding saga.